Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, the chicken, the egg, the ground game, the passing game. What Texas Tech has to get back on track first to get a win in Manhattan, Kansas.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet only $5. And if your bet hits, you're getting $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, getting closer to a big challenge this weekend. High stakes, and we want to keep them that way by virtue of success, hopefully in Manhattan, Kansas, with a win. On today's episode, we'll get to what obviously is on the line, not only this weekend, but what you could potentially set up the weekend to follow, with even some potential pomp and circumstance to be included if it goes the right way when you're back in the LBK. I also want to get to what else is out there future-wise, because I got to tell you, as I used the word hinge recently to describe the season hinging on this weekend, a couple of mobsters sort of took issue with that, saying we're not out of like life territory or pulse territory with a second loss. And I'm saying, wait, you're telling me there's a chance? So I'm going to pick your brain on that coming up in just a moment. But I was also having a text exchange with Jeremy, one of our mobsters, about what we've got coming up this weekend in the form of a defensive challenge from K-State. We've talked a ton about getting this offense back on track, and Baron Morton's back in the mix. You want to run the ball. You want to get back to explosive plays. And I think we credited the culture of K-State and what they typically are year to year. But when it comes to this year, Jeremy was actually bringing up the fact that he was taking in a fine program by the name of Locked On Kansas State with our guy Christian Rao, who you visited this week in a crossover episode. Find it on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. He mentioned that he heard Christian calling their D elite. Now, whether or not you define it as elite or whatever way you wanted to describe it, what do you think the makeup actually is of this K-State defense compared to what we've seen previously? Because there have been some pretty salty groups out there, whether in Utah or Houston or even Arizona State. So where would you kind of slot in these purple Wildcat defenders?
Well, I think man-to-man, like it is, I don't know if they've got some of the personnel that Utah had, but I think it's very comparable to Arizona State, to Houston. I think that's but here's so the term elite, everybody can kind of grade that how you want, but they are the way they're taking the football away. That cannot be disputed. So whether we want to call them elite or opportunistic or pick your word there, but if they can do this, I mean, this is one of the best in the country. My question would be that they have two really good, VJ Payne and Gunnar Maldonado. Des Purnell is playing some really good linebacker. They've got some defensive linemen. They don't have like the one edge guy that they've had in years past that you're just like really worried about. But they've got a D tackle, Damian Ilialo, I think is how I say it. If I've screwed that last name up, I'm not all the way there yet and learning all the pronunciations.
Ilialo.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But he's a plus player. But they're not going to overwhelm you with like scheme or talent as much as they've been playing pretty well together, and they're just been opportunistic, man. And all these takeaways haven't necessarily been on defense, although the bulk of them has. There's been a few special teams ones mixed in as well. But the question really becomes, what happens if you go up there and you don't turn it over? Okay, then what? Are you good enough to move the ball and move it consistently? Are they still pretty good, and you're still having to punt it some? If even if you're not, with the takeaways, if you're not turning it over, what and like is Kansas State, are they good enough to keep you out of the end zone and all that? If they can't, take it away a few 3 times or whatever, that's really what I think you'd like to see. if you'd like to know the answer to that question if you're Texas Tech. But this is, but here's the thing too. What Kansas State is typically the best at in these matchups, or has been over the years, and this is why they're a kind of a culture program. I think we said this to each other the other day. They typically just block and tackle better than the other guy.
Write that down, folks.
Yeah, remember. Like I don't need to overthink it. Yeah. And so, but what must, okay, so I'm gonna add an addendum to the don't turn it over or take care of it part, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So while we're wishing for stuff, that's a given. But the other thing is, you're going to need to make some plays after the catch or after contact.
Mm-hmm.
This was not really very present at all in Tempe. You just and Joey and we talked about it, but a lot of credit needed to be given to Arizona State. Can Kansas State replicate that? Because when I talked to my conversation with Christian, I said, here's what, you got all this bad history on your side on this deal if you're the Tech fan, coming into this matchup and all that stuff. Is this team different? Well, yeah, it is. Okay, for a variety of reasons. But here's what should give you, some serious hope or some feel good here. I think we would all agree you didn't play very well at all in Tempe. You just didn't. They punched you. They took the fight to you. And yet all that. And there's no yards after the catch. You didn't force any takeaways. You gave it to them in the red zone. All the stuff. And yet you have a 3-point lead with 2 to go. I mean, all that, and yet you still had a lead with 2 to go. And that's that. There is a difference in this Texas Tech team. And if anything, no, you didn't win it. Yes, you gave up a game-winning drive and all that stuff, but all that going against you, and yet you still, at the end of the day, you took all that they had. You took the punches. You didn't swing back much, and yet you threw a bunch of haymakers there in about a minute and a half stretch, and you were up 3 with 2 to go.
And I would say, Chris, that's because of some key defensive stops along the way, some key special teams impact, some key flipping of the field. Yep. And who does that remind you of? The guys we're going to see this weekend in a way. So now you didn't get over the hump, so it's all for naught. We all remember the result, obviously, but I'm kind of curious just along this same theme before we move on. I'm thinking offensively getting back on track, and this may be kind of a chicken and egg convo, so maybe more of a mental exercise than anything, or maybe there's a right answer. I don't know. But if it was the ground game or some cooking with the pass catchers, is there one you'd say this needs to make the first step, or this is what I want to really see happen over the other?
They have done a pretty good job, they being Kansas State, of stopping the run game over the last several, games. So they haven't, which is typical. If you're asking me for stuff and like what really, I mean, you need to bounce back in the run game. There is some thought around the Tech program that there were yards to be had last week against Oklahoma State, whether it's, it's just kind of one of those things where it's not as bad as the numbers would have shown. If you make a one more cut, or if this guy just holds his block a bit longer, stuff like that, but this is going to be one of those games where you do need to hold that block a bit longer. You do need to make that cut and not try to bounce it. And I mean, it needs to be all tightened up. But if you're asking me for stuff, I just think that this would help Barron the most is if you can have a competent running game. When we see some of that Salt Lake City performance, we see some of that Kansas performance. It's in there. And you're not going against, this is just going to be effort and want to and all the things. And Kansas State's going to be very competitive here. Make no mistake. This isn't going to be some easy deal like, man, we're just a lot better than these guys. That would shock me. So you're going to have to be willing to throw some body blows and be patient. And then I think Mac Leftwich would tell you, I need to stick with it, even if it's not working a little bit. Even when everybody's yelling at the TV and you're sitting there like I am, and you're going, okay, here we go. The Harleys.
I wanted to ask you that, Chris, if that's like a real thing internally, because I know that the fans have been, and it's sort of interesting. It's not the typical thing like, why are we banging our heads against the wall with the ground game? It's more so what I hear from fans saying, why are we giving up on it? Is that actually something they feel like they've done internally, or is that just more perspective from the bleachers?
I think I'm just saying, because we see all kinds of commentary out there. It's like, why'd you bail on it? Why are we doing this again? It's like, to each his own, right?
Yes.
I think Mac would tell you that, and I mean, he hasn't said this to me, and I mean, I'm not sure, but I mean, over the course of the season, I think there's been times in media settings where he's basically said, I probably should have stuck with it and leaned on him a little bit and not bailed on it, or however you want to phrase it. Because I just don't think you're going to be able to line up and gash these guys. We still don't know about what it's all going to look like personnel wise, with Jados and TC and all these different components. But if you're asking me for something on what needs to work, and you don't have to run for 300 plus. Not what I'm saying at all, but you can't run for 2.2 yards a carry either.
Yeah,
because you're not going to have any QB run game sprinkled in here either. So
yes.
You're going to have to manufacture like this is a game too where I think you manufacture some rushing yards with quick screens and some of the stuff that some don't like, but these are get it on the perimeter. Let's manufacture some touches for some guys, make them tackle us, see if we can break a few. You're going to be intentional with some of that as far as your game plan instead of your traditional run game as well too. I think just because there is I doubt very little to minimal QB run game aspects of this thing.
And what I'm hearing you also saying, what's whispering in the West Texas wind? Jet sweep. Things along those lines. I also would like to sprinkle in the touchdown plays. I just want to say for the record, make sure to call the scoring plays because, Lord, I can just hear the conversation already next week about horizontal passes and bubble screen, whatnot. Make sure some of these are touchdown plays also, Mac, if you don't mind. Okay, let's get on to the next thing, Chris, because I was getting a little feedback yesterday from some of our loyal listeners. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet only $5, and if your bet hits, you're getting $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Play your props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Any way you like it, FanDuel has you covered, and it's quick, easy, and secure every time. Ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. I was getting a little feedback yesterday from some of our loyal listeners following the titling of an episode where I used the word hinge as it relates to the season and this weekend. And it basically just means that I feel like every weekend now is a must win. And we've talked about sort of like, okay, here's your mulligan in Tempe, Arizona, and you used it there. You better be winning the rest of the way out if you want to be in Arlington. This is what this combo is all about. That's what I mean by must win or season hinging. I mean Arlington and a conference championship game hinging on winning a weekend like this. But as some were kicking it back to me that they didn't necessarily feel like that was the situation, I'm asking you, is there still a chance if it did go south this weekend that you're still in the running? Because I know some things have changed sort of since we had this conversation, given some recent results.
Yeah, I mean, things have changed, and they probably will continue to do so. This is a great conversation to have, and this is the fun part about the race here, because there's still a lot of chaos to be doled out. So what I'm going to go over here is like some of the obvious, but then there's also going to be something that happens or an injury that occurs outside of the norm that, or just an upset to where on paper you're like, that team had no business beating that team, to where we're not even going to talk about the game. Right. Okay. That didn't really factor into the standings that I'm not even going to go over here. So there's that, because you've got 4 to 5 weeks left of the season. But because of the Houston win over Arizona State is now chasing, and they've got to go to Ames, Iowa this weekend, and they're not going to have Sam Levitt. I don't know the status of Jordan Tyson just yet, to be sure. So, but let's just look at it. There's BYU and Cincy, which are both undefeated, and then there's Houston and Texas Tech that have the one loss, and then there's TCU, Utah, Arizona State, and Kansas State. Kansas State, yes, that all have 2 losses. Okay, so we start getting into remaining matchups and then tiebreakers and all the things. Okay, BYU and Cincy play. Okay, so there's 1 loss between them. But like, here's who Cincy still has a trip to Utah this weekend. I think Utah will beat them. Evan Pryor, I think their stud running back for Cincinnati, is not going to play in this game. That's a night game. I just and maybe there's a quarterback issue for Utah, so we'll keep an eye on that. But there's going to be a result there, and then Cincinnati's still got, like I said, at Utah they play BYU, and then they're at TCU. They could lose all 3, and then they're just like go from undefeated to just kind of out. They certainly could lose 2 of the 3. They're going to lose 1 of them, or I say the 2 undefeated teams. BYU's at Texas Tech next weekend. They play TCU, and then they're at Cincy. Okay, so there's losses between those 2 teams mixed in. You basically have Kansas State and then BYU. Okay, you win those 2 games and then beat UCF and West Virginia. You're in. You're straight. But if you lose to Kansas State, that's when you start looking around, going, okay, we're going to need a little help. You have the tiebreaker over Houston, so you need them to lose another. Because Houston all of a sudden is kind of this weird fly in the ointment, and they really have games against TCU and at Baylor. That's really it. They could lose both of those. They could win both of those. I mean, they could be staring at a 8-1 conference record. Now, if you just have the 1 loss and you have the tiebreaker. But if you have a second loss and they just have the 1, I mean, so all of a sudden you need to be rooting against Houston in a weird way. Although that's maybe your most impressive win. So it just speaks to, there's certainly an opportunity to make it. If you go 1-1 over these next 2 weeks, there's certainly some opportunities to make it. But again, it just goes into a variety of results, because I'll just do it this way. Like in chronological order, this week it's Texas Tech at Kansas State, it's Arizona State at Iowa State, and it's Cincy at Utah. Those are the 3 games you're paying attention to. The following week, it's BYU at Texas Tech, and it's Iowa State at TCU, as far as the conversation goes. Then the week after that, it's TCU at BYU. There's 1 week there where there's really nothing that makes any sense to like talk about now, that unless there's a hiccup by somebody that we're talking about, which, a UCF or a Baylor, they can make things interesting. I mean, is Baylor going to fire their head coach? Are they going to get hot? I don't know. But then there's a weekend where, let's see, Kansas State at Utah, BYU at Cincy, TCU at Houston. Then there's a week where it's University of Houston at Baylor and Cincy at TCU. So it's easy to kind of look at and circle the games each weekend and are going to factor into this deal. So absolutely you do. I just don't know if you want to play that game and play that, gamble here.
Preferably not.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to like talk in a whole bunch of circles, but it's pretty easy to kind of look at, and, we still got a lot left to go and more chaos to go, more injuries to go, more, what?
Yeah.
I didn't see that one coming to go. But for you go 2-0 over these next 2 weeks, and then you manage those final 2 games and not have a hiccup yourself. I mean, yeah, you're in Arlington, and we're all feeling pretty good about things.
All the preceding conversation, just for posterity's sake, these are not our wish list items. Just trying to make sure we all understand the lay of the land, and particularly me. I am just going to stick to, I'm a simple-minded creature. Must win is the bumper sticker. Let's just keep rolling that way into every weekend. But for those who are curious, there you go. Chris, some curiosity reigning also in another way as it relates to next week. First, today's episode brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else. And with a Mazda, you can make everyday drives feel like anything but, with smooth handling and intuitive controls. Plus, with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like the Red Raiders, Mazda sweats every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. if you are able to be successful this weekend, it seems like there are some signs indicating that you may have a big party back in Lubbock the following Saturday. I know it's going to be that way to an extent anyway as BYU comes to town, but there's been a lot of curiosity and questions from the mob and elsewhere about, with a win this weekend, would there be a possibility of getting a college game day appearance from ESPN? This has been announced as an 11 a.m. kick, an ABC or ESPN broadcast, which I think is also some arrow pointing towards that possibility. And then we have one in the form of, I believe, Reese Davis making some comments about not wanting to give anything away, but he's possibly stocking up on tortillas the next couple of weeks. So it sounds like it's a real possibility, or dare I say even likelihood, if, capital I and F, if you're successful this weekend. Is that how you are interpreting some of what we're seeing?
Yes. I think that is a very fair assumption. I think there's probably a certain circumstance where even if you don't, if you were to drop one in Kansas State here, that it still may get the nod. But I think a win, and I think it may lock it. And I can't say that for 100% certainty, but I feel I'm in the 90s on the percentage.
I like that.
And part of it is because BYU's off this weekend. They're going to be undefeated. They're probably going to be in the top 10 or just on the cusp of it at least. If you were to win this weekend, you may also, and so it could present itself as a top 10 matchup. So there's that. The other thing is like with LSU's demise and Brian Kelly being fired and them getting blown out, there's an LSU-Alabama game that day that probably would have been fairly attractive if you're looking at it a month ago with national championship or playoff implications or whatever. Well, not as much now. And then the other one is A&M is at Missouri, which is also going to be should be a top 20 matchup. But Missouri just dropped one to Vanderbilt. Had Missouri beat Vanderbilt, maybe we're having a different conversation now. But A&M is all of a sudden undefeated and they're top 5 in the country and all that stuff. So anyways, but again, it's just amazing what a win could do for you this weekend in Manhattan. It could set up kind of what you're wanting to do here, and just figure it out, man. Just go get a result by hook, by crook, back up in there, back out of there. Half a point. I don't give a damn. You're just trying to get a result. I'll sit here and talk about all the problems you had on Sunday. You will too if you got a result. I won't. Man, I don't know how they did it. This looked terrible. This guy didn't play well. I don't know. Whatever. But just get a result, man, and keep swinging. That's really the goal here. It's a 7-point spread this weekend, but it's just not going to be easy at all. And we've all seen the movies before that don't end well. This is a different group. Pretty simple, though. Just go take care of it. Barron has said it repeatedly this week. I just have to get the balls of my playmakers. Just get this guy the ball, get this guy the ball, Yep. Let them do their thing. And if you get a typical defensive performance, I refuse to believe, too. I'll go back to that Tempe game. I refuse to believe that you poke it out 3 times, this one, that one of them won't bounce to you. I just don't know if you're going to live that way with the football gods going, we're not rewarding you again today, even though you made the right play and you poked that ball out, and we're going to give it to the purple guy. Again, I mean, the football gods can't like purple either, really, right? I mean, I don't
know. It is a royal color.
True.
Chris, I would say I'd love to be discussing another ugly, sort of melancholy, 42-0 shutout. That'd be fantastic. I'd be up for that episode.
Oh man,
on Sunday. Back to the game day thing for a second before we get out of here. Cincinnati and Utah this weekend, and I know as you're just describing some of those other matchups, the offerings elsewhere always have a lot to do with what they're choosing. Also, I was a little surprised by this one, and I guess I'm going to be, if it does develop that way, even more surprised that there would be a back-to-back Big 12 weekend for ESPN. I know there's a lot of thoughts out there about what ESPN's motivations are, and obviously what they want to market and represent. But did it surprise you where they were headed this weekend, and would it surprise you to have back-to-back Big 12 features?
Well, a little bit. I was semi surprised about the Utah Cincy game. I think that it's part of the weekend slate that kind of dictates it. As I'm sitting here, looking at it, it's. I mean, Texas Vanderbilt, that would have maybe been the one, but Texas hasn't really played great. There's not
enough brand power in that one for me, Chris.
Yeah, and I think they probably are feeling it a bit on the, we need to not lean into our favorites as much, but
do you think they care?
There's some optics there that I think certain people do and certain people don't care, but I think it's a bit of a thing. Sure.
There's also a financial bottom line, right?
Yeah, no doubt. But part of it too is that the Cincinnati and Utah game is on ESPN. And then when you see the TV selections for the BYU Texas Tech game, it's either going to be on ABC or ESPN. So there's some connection there too. Yeah. If this game or that particular game would have been picked up by Fox, again, we're probably having a bit of a different conversation. But I think there's some synergy there with that's why I say I really do. I think there's still a chance if it doesn't go your way in Manhattan. I think there's still a chance it could still come your way this coming weekend. Either way, man, I'm just here for the result. I think it would help it would certainly help the pomp and circumstance in the crowd and all the things, because I think the fan base loves these shows. They showed up for Big Noon last year. The one time Game Day was here in 2008. It was a massive deal. Bob Knight was famously said, I mean, I got a lot of friends at Texas, but today I deeply hope we beat their ass. It's just this is one of the, and then Lee Corso with the, it's just, it's iconic in our deal here. Just remember that like it was yesterday, and it's been 17 years.
Yeah, let's not do the math on that too closely. And I'd just like to say all the preceding comments about next week were delivered with all due respect to Kansas State. Chris, sure. Appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoyed it. Looking ahead to a final go-around for the week. We'll dive into the mailbag before we send you to the Sunflower State. So looking forward to it.
Well, I can tell you that the Sunflower definitely resides in Manhattan, because they've beaten Kansas in the Sunflower Showdown. It 17 years in a row?
Yes, that's off of them.
Jeez, some rivalry.
And I heard, by the way, there were K-State fans chucking tortillas in Lawrence. I appreciated that pettiness and research.
Pocket knives too, maybe? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, let's not get any more false flags underway.
Okay. All right. But yeah, let's hope these same Kansas State fans are throwing the tortillas this weekend as well. I mean, I won't be mad at it. No. I won't be mad at all. By the way, I know you saw the bottle throwing activity going on in Tempe, Arizona, late in the game this past weekend, with a lot of ref you suck chants. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I haven't seen anything else come of that, but I don't know. It wasn't lost on me. I thought only Texas Tech fans were,
yeah, since I didn't see all the stern messaging from the office and things like that, I assume they must have been made to understand that in the desert, that was just an effort to help hydrate the official ref. You suck it on that end, the water comes out. You're in the desert, stay hydrated.
Or water in the grass. It is a natural
trying to make a hand. That's just being neighborly. Right. I guess maybe out there. I don't know. Or something else entirely was afoot. Either way, we don't have time to investigate here this week. We got bigger fish to fry. All right. Thank you all for being out there. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Of course, appreciate the everydayers for always riding along, and the Matador Mob for spurring on some of this here conversation today. You can hit our show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial at your direct line to Chris and myself, with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. And shout out to my man Nathan, who contacted me, Chris, because apparently somebody's letting him know I'm due for a backflow test. He said, I'm also a faithful listener and Matador Mobster. I said, Nathan, come on by. Let's keep this cash circling in the family. So please let me know what other services the mob can provide to Chris or my household, because I know we're probably needing the same things along the way. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, everybody, for being out there. And thank you for the time. As always, we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.